everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Dakota Lasky and Doomino Crossing for this action-packed episode this week. Dak, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Had my second day of hockey this week, which is nice to be back on the ice. It's getting a little easier. Going down to Philly this weekend to cast some Counter-Strike, which should be a lot of fun. And yeah, it's been a pretty good week so far, and looking forward to getting into some more Metroid. So yeah, I'm doing good.
Doom, I feel like it's been a minute since we had the pleasure of having you on the show. How have you been? I mean, we've been talking, but you haven't been on the actual show in a long time. What's been going on, man?
Yeah, life's been pretty interesting lately. So over Halloween, on Halloween, me and my Super Smash Brothers club on campus here at Cal State Monterey Bay, we hosted our very first fundraiser drive for the National Breast Cancer Foundation. We've been planning it for about a year now, finally got it off the ground. We were only expecting to make like maybe $100, $150 maybe if we're lucky, and we ended up raising over $1,000, so it was pretty incredible. Yeah. Very proud of my team and all the officers who helped me put this together. It was absolutely successful beyond our wildest imagination. Beyond that, yesterday I finally released my rip of the Metroid Dread soundtrack, which we'll get into our thoughts of the soundtrack later, obviously. But you know, yeah, so that's out now. Has some custom album artwork as well for it. So yeah, go check that out if you want to listen to some high quality Metroid tunes.
There you go. Roll Tide on that Smash Bros event. $1,000. That's pretty awesome, man. Well, yeah, we are here today to, I don't want to say put an end to our Metroid Dread talk, because it's not we're going to be talking about Metroid Dread for a long time, but this is the last one that really gets really granular on Metroid Dread for at least the next couple weeks here, as we kind of gear towards the end of the year and gear towards 2022. So we are back, and the three of us have combined our heads together to definitively rank Metroid Dread. And actually, I was kind of thinking that it might be fun to do like another definitive ranking of Metroid Dread in like a year or like 18 months to see if any of our, opinions have changed over time, anything like that. But I feel like, it's been almost it's been over a month at this point, so I think we have a pretty good idea of where our thoughts and opinions lie on Metroid Dread. So let's just let's get right to it. We have three very opinionated dudes here, and there is a lot of ground to cover. So yeah, man, let's get into it. So the gist of definitive ranking, for anybody that doesn't know, and if you haven't, we've definitively ranked Metroid Fusion, Metroid Prime 2, and Metroid 2 Return of Samus before, is that we take let's say, the 10 most important categories of a Metroid game, and we rank them out of 5. 1 being the absolute worst, 5 being the absolute best. And we're going to take all of those scores, and we're going to make one kind of master score at the end. And I have to be honest, guys, I haven't even thought about my scores yet. Like, I kind of have an idea of what I'm going to give, but I didn't want to think about it too hard so that it could kind of come off the top of my head a little bit more. So I'm excited to get this going and see where you guys end up as well, because I'm sure that there are going to be some areas that we end up disagreeing about.
Absolutely.
Almost certainly. From what we've talked about on the Discord, there's definitely going to be, or even just some of the previous episodes of the podcast you guys have talked about, there's definitely going to be some areas of disagreement. But I also think there's going to be more areas we agree on than disagree on too, because I think, regardless of some of our areas in the game, I think it's fair to say that all three of us, spoiler alert, really enjoyed the game overall.
Yes. Yeah, no doubt about that. By the way, there's going to be spoilers on this episode. I'm sure they're going to come in at some point.
There are spoilers. Play the game, or spoilers.
You know what? Actually, I want to give my 2 cents about that, because there was some controversy with certain websites this weekend posting spoilers. I think that for me, I'm going to keep giving the spoiler warning until after Christmas. Because, you know what, maybe some people are we were obviously all in a good position to go and get it launch day. Not everybody is in that situation, but maybe they're they can get the game at Christmas, whatever. I think after Christmas, that's fair game. But for now, yeah, there's going to be spoilers. I can't imagine anybody listening to this hasn't beat Metroid Dread, but if you haven't, there is your warning. So, that being said, gentlemen, let's get started. Actually, maybe before we get started, I'll run through our 10 categories here, just so that all of our listeners can be kind of up to date and aware of what is going to be going on here. But here we go. Category number 1, the world and atmosphere of the game. Category number 2, the art style. Number 3, story. 4, which is really important, I think, pacing and progression. 5, gameplay and combat. 6, items and abilities. 7, the areas of the game. 8, enemies and bosses. 9, expansions, collectibles, and extras. And 10, the music and sound design. So I'm ready to rock and roll. Let's start off with the world and the atmosphere. I don't want to go first, actually. I feel like I usually take the lead, but I want to hear from you, Dak. I want to hear you rank this world and atmosphere.
All right, world and atmosphere. You know what? This is a game overall that I think like really nails just like the feel of a Metroid game. Like you feel like you're on an alien planet. You're going through like classic kind of Metroid environments. I think there's a lot of, names notwithstanding, I think all the areas in the game are pretty well designed. So I mean, honestly, I would give it a 5. I feel like the things I have about the world and the atmosphere are very nitpicky, so I really can't think of anything that I like really truly dislike. I think other than the names, like that's really all I can think of. So yeah, maybe a 5. I don't know, I'm feeling 5-ish. That's what came out, so I'm going with that.
Okay, I can be down with that. Doom, what do you think?
Yeah, mine's going to be somewhere in between a 4 or a 5 as well. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of this game and just the overall design of the world, the feeling that it gave you. I know we kind of groan when we say it, but it really did instill that sense of dread like throughout from start to finish. And so I really thought it was very successful in that area. And also another thing, I'm not sure if this plays more into the art direction, but one thing I really enjoyed about each environment specifically is how it wasn't tied to one specific theme. Like each environment obviously had like their main theme, but there are also like all these sub areas that deviated from it. Like in Artaria, it's mainly like this kind of icy cavernous world, but then you also have the central thermal control. You have those frozen areas, you have some water areas as well in there. In Daron, it's mainly this kind of factory / biological laboratory. But then, again, you also have the freezing areas. You also have these coral reef sections, which kind of transfer into Berenia. And it kind of reminded me of the Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze in that sense. Because when you would go level to level, the end of the level would like transition into the theme of the next level. And it kind of reminded me of a lot of that in a sense.
Wow. So hold on. Are you giving it a 4 or are you giving it a 5?
Gotta pick one.
Screw it. We'll give it a 5. We'll give it a 5.
Yeah.
We'll go big.
Team 5.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so Dak, I asked you to start because I was like, I think I want to give this a 5, but I don't want to be giving that out right away. I want to know. I didn't want to be made fun of right away, but yeah, I'm giving it a 5. Like to me, there is a distinction between the world and atmosphere and the areas of a Metroid game, and the overall package in this game, I think just really nails it. The sense of like, I don't want to say dread, but the sense of like helplessness and also like the heart pounding atmosphere when you're running away from an Emmy, or even when you're in that Emmy room, how that kind of seeps into the rest of the game. The just like the ambiance and it feels very much in the same way. So I've been replaying Super Metroid, and Zebes in that game just feels like it's a character. And I think that ZDR as well just feels like it is this character, and that there is always these moments, and there's just like something hanging over you throughout the entire game. I'm trying not to say a sense of dread because that is cheesy, but I think that it is done really, really smartly. I think that the world is put together in a really awesome way. I love how you're able to kind of use the transporters, and they transport you, but then to a relevant area for something that you need. So I think that the world is structured in a really great way, while still, like we were talking about in our Artaria episode, it still offers like kind of the best of both worlds with like Super Metroid's open-ended, go wherever you want kind of presentation, but there are some elements of Metroid Fusion in there, which is like very objective-based, like you have to stop what you're doing and do this right now. I think that this walks a really great line and strikes that chord in a really perfect way, actually, for me. So yeah, this one was a 5 for me. The setting, the planet of ZDR just felt so spectacular to me. It just, and maybe this is, blinded by the fact that, the three of us are still hyped up that Metroid Dread exists at all. But yeah, the world that they created, the setting of this game is just fantastic and really, I think is one of the best in Metroid.
And before we move on too, I want to say one of my favorite things about the world is that the Chozo just aren't there. They're very much integrated into the actual world itself. Like you have like many different new sites involving Chozo statues. Some of like the most iconic shots in the game involve like those kind of Chozo statues. You have like the experimentation rooms they have, and obviously towards the end of the game, you end up in actual like a Chozo city or whatever, right? Like that kind of stuff I thought was really cool. And it wasn't just, oh, you're on a planet and the Chozo are here and they're kind of mixed in. Like as the game kind of goes on, it ramps up the amount of like involvement they are in the actual world itself, which I really enjoyed.
Well, I wanted to go off a bit because I don't think that that we enjoy the environment just because we're hyped for the game. Because I think as we get along, there are going to be genuine criticisms that we all have in various aspects. Zach, I already know your criticism. I'm pretty sure y'all know some of my criticisms by now. But yeah, so I definitely think that our praise of the environment is genuine, I think, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm also going to praise the art style and graphical prowess of this game as well. This is a 5 for me. I think that the art style is awesome. The Dread suit is instantly, from the moment I saw it, one of my favorite designs for Samus, like ever. That white looks so good with the blue shoulder pads, looks so good. I think the gravity suit looks awesome. I think the Varia suit looks awesome. I think the game, just in general, looks awesome. There's so many breathtaking rooms. You look at the design of, like, Ravenbeak, he looks awesome. I feel like I'm going to keep on saying awesome over and over again, but, like, it looks so... It looks awesome. Spectacular. Like, you have old returning favorites like Kraid, who also just looks very detailed, very grotesque, very repulsive, which I think is exactly what you want for a guy like him. The game made the X look exactly like how I pictured they might look in like an HD remake. So I think that and there's a ton of little things too. We were actually talking last week about the hint butterflies and like the little bioluminescent, butterflies that float around everywhere. Those really add to the ambiance. You get those sweeping, spectacular shots like at the top of Arteria with the lava in the background, or in the even in some of the rooms of Dairon where you have like the giant, what we thought might be Dragon in those containers. The game has incredible attention to detail in its backgrounds. It would have been easy to have just kind of like generic looking rooms, but I really feel like for the most part, the graphical presentation and the overall aesthetic of the game really does look spectacular. I could probably list off a bunch of other different places in this game. I mean, the first time you get to Berenia and you see the waves crashing is spectacular. Yep. Pretty much every background in Ferenia is awesome, with like the Chozo City and stuff like that. So, I mean, you go down the list and it's just like, okay, the characters look awesome, check. The backgrounds look awesome, check. The environments look awesome, check. I mean, this is check for me. Easy 5.
Yeah. I mean, my only gripe would honestly be with the fact that the game doesn't perform entirely stably, but that's the Switch's fault and not the game's fault. Art style, I mean, this is why I love that 2D Metroid is in 3D now, because there's just like a level of detail and fidelity you can get with, 3D like animation that you just can't get with 2D art or pixels or whatever. Like, I understand that people really have, a desire that or like want for that kind of 2D Metroid, and I've even seen some people say they would have preferred Dread being in like a pixel 2D kind of format, and I just absolutely cannot agree whatsoever. I mean, Dread just looks so good. The cinematic feel, like you said, sweeping shots, the detail you get from the characters, the environment, the effects are all stuff you absolutely couldn't do in the old style. So, like I said, the only thing that I could ever knock this for, and it isn't even really art style, but it just comes into like graphics, is the fact that the game does not perform at a stable 60 frames or whatever, which is annoying. But that's the hardware's fault, not the game's fault. Otherwise, yeah, I would also give this a 5.
Yeah, pretty much
All right.
what Dak just said, especially, you know, regarding the performance, because like there's like some small things that'll take you out of the game, but nothing that like detracts from the experience. And again, it's more a Switch hardware fault, not like an issue with Mercury Steam or their team, because it's clear like what they've done with this game. Like, it's incredibly talented. By the way, I'm also going like straight 5 for this as well. Like, the easiest decision in the world. One thing that we haven't talked about that I feel like really contributes to this is the animation in this game is freaking incredible. Oh my god, Samus has never looked so good, and I feel like and it also helps with the gameplay, which we'll talk about the gameplay later, because I feel like the animation, like, it makes that better as well. But like, Samus's movements are so slick, they feel so natural, and not just her, but also the Emmy as well. Like, the movements they feel so organic yet mechanical at the same time. Like the way it crawls up walls and the way it morphs its body around ledges and stuff like that. And the personality that the wildlife is given to the area, as well as Samus itself. And I feel like all of that just coalesces together, and that's what makes this game feel so special to me.
100% agree.
Yeah, great observation too, and you can like the animations that you're just talking about. I also feel like that plays a little bit into the atmosphere as well of the world, and like how just slick and personable that world feels. But yeah, the just the animations and the direction of them, it really, you know, that's quintessential art style. And I mean, if there was ever an easy 5, I think that this one was it. There's going to be some more easy 5s actually for me.
There's actually another example I want to give with one of the enemies and one of their variants specifically. So I don't know if you know what the Klyda is. It's like one of the first enemies you encounter. It has like the orange spikes on its back. You all know the one I'm talking about? Yeah. So if you shoot that at first, that first variant, it'll like scurry away and run away from you. But then you'll see another variant in Daron with like this kind of shock collar leash on you, and the second it sees you, it'll immediately charge at you, and you have to counter it, and it'll do a ton of damage. And I kind of like that evolution of storytelling, of where it's like, hey, this is the wildlife version that hasn't been like experimented on by the Chozo and whatnot, and then you have this other version that just immediately it's been trained to kill. And I just thought that was like a really nice detail. It doesn't explain it to you in boldface. It's just kind of like a conclusion that you can naturally come to. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, no, that's cool. All right, so right now, for 3 people, out of a possible 30 points, Metroid Dread is sitting at 30 points. And I'm afraid that streak is going to come to an end, because our next category is the story of the game. And
I'm going last on this one, by the way. I want to hear y'all opinions on this first.
Okay, I'll go first. I think that obviously your mileage for this story depends on how invested you were in Metroid Fusion's Galactic Federation subplot. I think that that's a fair statement to make. And just to be clear, I have no problem with people being disappointed with this story because it drops that subplot. I think that's a completely fair criticism, and completely valid. I wasn't like diehard into that story, so it's not as much of a disappointment for me, but I'm going to knock it points for continuity issues. So I'm going to give it a 4, because I do like... I mean, overall, I really like the whole package of the story, with like the Emmys going missing, the X being discovered, Ravenbeak kind of emerging as this character that has been, doing some damage kind of behind the scenes in Samus Returns, and now showing up in Metroid Dread. But there certainly are continuity issues. Like we talked about Kraid being in Metroid Dread. Is that an issue for some people? For most people, probably not, I would say, but that is a continuity issue. And of course, the big issue with the Galactic Federation. I still think that is probably a thread that is going to be picked back up, maybe as soon as Metroid 6, but I don't think that you can ignore that. But for what the story that this game does tell, with the Metroid vaccine, with Samus like basically turning into a Metroid over the course of this game, with Ravenbeak and his experimentation on both Samus, the Emmys, the world. I really like the story for this. I think it's told really well. It popped me that you finally got to see a living Chozo. So there was like a ton of stuff to like here. So I'm going to give it a 4. So Doom, what do you say?
All right, so I'm gonna give the story a 3, but before I go, I just wanna say one thing. So I've beaten this game 3 times by now, probably gonna do my 4th time real soon, and each time I beat the game, I care less about the story. So like the overall impact the story has on my overall grade like goes down each time I beat the game because I'm just enjoying the game for what it is. That being said, story in a bubble, I'm gonna give it a 3. And aside from the Federation conspiracy stuff and like that, because I've made my opinions on that clear already. Obviously, I'm disappointed that wasn't addressed. I mean, I've been waiting 20 years for that. It was the big story thread that was.
Thank you.
That was hung out. Like it would be like if Metroid Prime 4 didn't address Silex at all. Like after teasing him at the end of Prime 3 and Federation Force. Like yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'd be a little disappointed.
No, I actually don't think that's an apt comparison. I think that the tease for
right.
Fusion. No. The tease for Fusion with the Galactic Federation was much stronger than it was for Silex.
It was much stronger, but they're still both significant enough where either of them not being
they
addressed.
are, but it was much more prevalent to Metroid Fusion.
I would definitely agree, but I think I agree with the point that if Silex was not brought up in Prime 4, much like if the Federation and they weren't brought up in Dread, I 100% agree. If Prime 4 has nothing to do with Silex, I would be disappointed because it is essentially leading to that. It should, but continue.
But anyways, that's all stuff. I feel like we've discussed a lot of that on the Discord already, so I don't want to get too much into that. I want to go into what the story we actually did get offered was, and just reviewing that on its own merits. And so, I like the skeleton of the story, but I think the biggest problem I have with the overall structure is that it has a similar problem that Metroid Other M does. And I'm not saying that it's a Metroid Other M tier story. Not even close. Not even close. But it shares a similar problem where in Metroid Other M, the game's story has more interest in shocking reveals than substance, and I felt like a lot of Dread's story was similar in that way. Because, so for example, let's just cut right back to like the big final reveals at the end, where, what's his face? Ravenbeak was one of the people that implanted the DNA into Samus. How the hell did that happen? Because the Makin and the Thoha are enemies. And so I'm just going to read through my notes here because I have a ton of questions right here. So, first, if the Thoha tribe can control the Metroids, why did they attack them on SR-388? Maybe this will be addressed later, but it feels like a major plot hole. Why did the Thoha tribe on SR-388 contact the Makin people? If the Metroids are specifically programmed to terminate Makin DNA, that implies that Thoha has viewed them as just as much, if not more, of a threat than the X-Parasite. Why didn't the Makin grab any Metroids while they were initially on SR-388? Because that's the whole plot point, is like, oh, Samus foiled their plans by destroying the Metroids, but they were already on SR-388 before Samus was. I don't know. How did Ravenbeak give Samus his DNA if the Thoha and Makin tribes were enemies? I know that's a lot of stuff that I just like poured on out of nowhere, but like those were a lot of.
If I may, I think that a common misconception I've seen with people is that the Thoha and Makin were always enemies. Because I think that Samus Returns and Metroid Dread makes it pretty apparent that they weren't. They were comrades at one point, and then the situation on SR-388 happened, and essentially the Makin turned against the Thoha, and I think at that point, that's when Quiet Robe is like, all right, Metroids, you're going after the Makin, because these guys are our enemies now. That is my interpretation.
But by the time, time they terminated the Thoha tribe, the Metroids were already created. There weren't any more Metroids created after that. At least not by the Chozo. Obviously, there's cloning and stuff, and stuff like that from the Federation and the Space Pirates. But the Makin and the Chozo didn't create any more Metroids after that. Like the Metroids that were created on SR-388 were created at the beginning with that intent, or at least that's what I got out of it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Right. And this probably is a criticism of the game for not explaining this, but in my mind, I was just like, all right, so the Thoha control the Metroids. They can just, if there is 100 Metroids that were 100 years old, they can just say to them like, okay, y'all, now the Makin are your enemy because they are the ones that control them.
You guys just explain this like this sounds like such nonsense to me. But continue. I'm sorry. Wow. Just what you guys are just. I guess I'll jump in here. I'm gonna give the story a 2. First off, obviously completely disappointed in the lack of Federation stuff. Completely disappointed in the fact that we got no real Adam in the game when he was one of my favorite characters in Fusion. But even besides that, like going into like with the story we actually got, 100% agreed. So much of this game is based on shock and not substance. There are tons of stuff that come up and I'm like, wait, what? Like, okay, fine. It's also rushed. The end of the game is super rushed. They throw a ton of lore on you and then boss battle escape end. There's no resolution. The Quiet Robe scene where Samus meets Quiet Robe, I thought was so underwhelming. Like, I expected way more for Samus seeing a Chozo for the first time in forever. And they're like, oh, hey, all right, well, I guess there's a mission. I'm going to go do it. Like, it was such a casual conversation, and, like, Samus widened her eyes. I'm like, oh, my God. No, it should have been like, so much of this game told me that Mercury Steam didn't really, like, understand the weight of a lot of the stuff that was happening, or a lot of the stuff that was happening. Like, the weight of and significance of Samus running into a Chozo, even if Samus didn't know the Chozo specifically, is still such a monumental moment, and I literally felt like, whatever, no big deal. Aside from that, I think a lot of the story just feels super packed into certain moments, and other times nothing's happening whatsoever. What else? Yeah, just a lot of stuff is rushed, and they're just, like even Doom was saying, there's so much stuff that is unexplained in a game that's supposed to end the story and tie up loose ends, and so much stuff doesn't make sense, comes out of nowhere, requires some weird mental gymnastics to make sense, or just sounds like silly and convoluted, and it completely takes me out of the game. I was very disappointed with the story, and to be honest, the big reason why I wanted this game was for the story. So, I mean, not gonna lie, I've literally only played through Dread once since the game has come out. I've played it again in pieces for the episode since we've done since then, but the disappointment I've had for the story, which was the big reason why I wanted the game in the first place, has made me not even want to really play the game much. Like, the gameplay is cool and all, but it has no meaning to me now. Like, a lot, like, I don't know. So I'm gonna give it a 2. A 1 for me would be like the story literally doesn't work, like another M. And this, like, the story works, I guess, but there are so many things that don't make sense, or are unexplained for no reason, or happen off screen, and we have to assume in a game that's a finale of the story where you shouldn't be assuming things, doesn't follow through, or it doesn't have perfect continuity from the previous games, or even like attempted appropriate continuity. Some stuff just doesn't make any sense in the context of the previous games. And also, I think the worst thing is that it doesn't at all make me excited for what's happening next. Like, I literally do not care what's going to happen in the next Metroid 6, because I really don't. Number one, my investment in the story was proven to be valueless. And second, the ending doesn't really, I'm like, okay, I guess, like, anything could happen, and I have no, like, real desire. Like, I guess whatever happens, I'll see what happens. And when Fusion ended, I waited 20 years for a sequel to that, because I was so into it. And this, I'm like, whatever, I'm ready for Prime 4. So, yeah, this gets a 2 from me, and it's probably one of the weakest parts of the game. So, yeah.
There's a couple
I can't wait
points...
to talk next week about Metroid 6 ideas.
I don't even know if I want to be there, because I'm just going to be like, this is the game. Metroid 6, let's go through the plot of Metroid Dread.
I'm not going to lie, I was considering as a joke just proposing the story of Metroid Dread for that episode.
That's what I'm going to do. The story of Metroid 6 should have been what happened in Dread. But and that's why I don't want the Federation stuff to come up again, because it literally wouldn't make any sense. Because then you're telling me that Samus worked with the Federation in Other M, saw they were sus, goes to Fusion, works with them again, they're sus again, and then works with them in Dread again. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I cannot suspend disbelief that much. So if they end up doing that in the next game, I would be like, bro, I don't even care, and that is so dumb. Yeah, I'm very disappointed in the story. Literally the only reason I'm not giving it a 1 is because it is a actual functioning story, and it's not Other M.
There's a couple points that you brought up that I kind of want to go more into detail with, because I agree with a couple things that you brought up. One, I do think the way the story is told is really poorly done. You're giving a lot of stuff at the start, then it's nothing, and then you get a huge lore dump in the middle, then absolutely nothing, and then a huge lore dump at the end, and then the game just rushes you to the finish line, and it doesn't give you any time to reflect or think about anything. And I agree that was really poorly done. Fusion, I know, Andy, you're not a big fan of the way Fusion does its story, but the thing that I like about Fusion is that, you know, it's told you in little bite-sized chunks throughout the course of the game. Even though I do agree that some of Adam's dialogue in Fusion can get a bit redundant sometimes, and some of the more objective style gameplay doesn't quite work in a lot of the situations, but the story itself is easier to take in because it's not just super fed you at 1 point or 2 points in the game. Like it slowly builds up throughout the course of the game, and it feels much more natural. In Dread, it doesn't. It's just like, big thing gets revealed here, 5 hours later, another big thing gets revealed, or maybe 30 minutes later, depending on how fast you're playing the game at that point. But yeah. So I agree that I think that's a pretty big flaw with Dread's story.
And then also regarding the pacing too, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, and then regarding the Chozo, so there's an really unnecessary retcon in this game that really frustrates me. And I in fact, I think it might have even been retconned back in Samus Returns as well. I'm not sure. I got to do more research in it. But basically, it's this retcon that the galaxy never believed the Chozo were extinct. The game never explicitly says this, but a lot of the promo materials in the Dread reports hints that nobody in the galaxy actually thought that the Chozo were extinct. They've just always been like a quiet species that kind of kept to themselves. And I think that kind of plays why into Samus doesn't have as big of a reaction as maybe Dak and I wanted, because we're in our Metroid lore, the galaxy did believe that the Chozo became extinct after the pirates invaded Zebes. And so for us, and I feel like that's why we're having like a bigger reaction to the Chozo than Samus is, because in this new Metroid timeline, Samus never actually thought the Chozo were extinct. And I don't know, that's a really unnecessary retcon. It's really dumb. I feel like it makes the overall story and the lore worse. Like, it makes the Chozo feel significantly less impactful, less special, and yeah, I don't know. I just wasn't a fan of that change at all. And again, totally unnecessary. You could tell Dread's story with the galaxy still believing that the Chozo were extinct.
Or at the very least gone, because like I think part of it too is like, even if they weren't extinct, 100%, all since I've played Metroid, the general idea is that the Chozo disappeared. For whatever reason, they are no longer prominent or around in the universe, so whether they're extinct or they are so far away and uncontactable that they essentially are extinct. 100%. Now it's like, oh yeah, no big deal. They've actually just been around. They just, haven't really been in the story for some reason. 100% agree. I didn't like that either.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are probably expecting that I'm going to argue with a bunch of your points here, but I'm not really. I think those are fair criticisms, especially about the Chozo going from extinct to not extinct. That was a little bit weird. I didn't have a problem with the Chozo reaction, but I have seen that, and again, your mileage may vary depending on how emotive you wanted Samus to be. One thing that I will say, and it's not I'm not necessarily defending it, but because I do think that you get that lower dump in the middle, that lower dump in the end. But I guess to me, like, a lower dump is like confusing and hard to keep up with. Like, I watched Dune, and I've never seen Dune, right? And I was like, what the hell is going on? Because like all the time there were like multiple lower dumps in that movie, right? And so I was like, I was just like, okay, whatever. I don't get it, but this looks cool, so great. I will say that like I was never confused by the story of Metroid Dread. I was like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. Let's go. Perfect. Great. At times there were some things that I was just like, oh, that makes sense, but it's disappointing and it's not really what I wanted. So I can definitely agree with you guys in that regard. But I guess that's the only points I'll make about the story before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with what Doom said. Like, for what it's worth, like, even if you don't like how Adam just distributes information, the fusion plot's always happening in the game. It's not like in Dread, literally, like, it becomes where there's no plot and it's just gameplay, and then that's not really for me. I like to have a little meaning behind my gameplay, and there's certain parts of Dread where just there is no story, no plot happening whatsoever. I'm just waiting for the big next info dump, and that just kind of takes me out of it.
Yeah, I guess the final thing I'll say in the story, because I could say a bunch more, but like we've talked about this topic for long, and I can always make a video going more in depth. But I think the final thing that I will say that kind of leads to my disappointment in the story is that, unlike Metroid Other M, where I feel like it's a hassle to like rewrite that story to make it work in a way that like actually makes it satisfying, I feel like Dread's story, like the changes that you can make to it, I feel like are like relatively easy. Like, you can easily make this story work and satisfy people like Dak and I who wanted, an answer to those questions lingering at the end of Fusion. I do think that there's ways that you could fix up the story in general to make it more coherent to the overall Metroid lore and timeline. Just little like nips and tucks and ways to trim the fat and stuff like that.
I 100% agree. Like, it's one thing with Other M where I'm like, okay, it's garbage, it's not salvageable, whatever, I can, like, not think about it. But, like, the fact that this game is so close to having a really good story that hits on all levels but just isn't, and they just, like, either didn't decide to do that or they didn't have an awareness of knowing how to improve it, that kills me. Because, like, so many small changes could have been made to address the Federation stuff, to, you know, keep continuity, and they just didn't do it, despite having the assets and elements to tell that kind of story. That's really what hurts, because I'm like, oh, they were so close. I waited 20 years and they couldn't, like, just change this small thing. Like, damn. Like, with Other M, I was just like, this whole thing is garbage. This has that potential, and for whatever reason, it just didn't live up to it.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all, actually. I think that had you, at the beginning of the game, included a line or two of dialogue that even was just like, they intercepted the signal on their own, or like, watch out because the Galactic Federation is also coming here.
And then you just have the Emmys go after Samus. That would have made so much more sense.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? There is one more thing I'm going to say. So this game.
All right, make it fast because we got to move on.
All right, so this game teases at the possibility so much that it's the Federation, and specifically in the marketing. And like, I don't think it was intentional, but it was like, oh, how convenient. The Federation robots that are sent to the planet have gone rogue. Curious. Huh. Oh, Adam is going crazy at the end of the game. Huh. Curious. And then every single time it's like I got a little hope, and then it ripped me away. Anyways, I'm done. I'm done rambling.
I will tell you this. I thought that Adam screwed you for sure at the end of the game, and I was like, okay, cool. I knew this guy was sus all along. Anyways,
I wanted him to betray us. I was so mad.
I wanted the real Adam. I liked more. I wanted more of the grown character we got from the previous game, and he's not even in this game. And I'm like,
oh, that's okay. Adam sucks. Let's move on. We got a lot of ground to cover here, gents, and we're still on category number 4. But the good news is that I think that the next couple categories are going to be fairly positive and maybe fairly quick as well. On our next category, we got pacing and progression. This is a 5 for me. Like I was talking about earlier, the game always keeps you moving. It all, like, you never, to me at least, like, you never feel lost. I know that some people got stuck in the room. What's that guy's name again that freaked out?
David Jaffe.
Yeah, the Jaffe room. So I know this, like, a few people got stuck in the Jaffe room, but even that, I feel like I felt like I was always, like, I was never stuck. I always felt like I knew where to go. I felt like the game was kind of pushing me along to the next expansion or power-up that I needed. I really like the teleportation devices that kind of took you to the relevant area where the next expansion that you needed was. I think that this game really, like, there was never any dead space, I feel like. I don't say that in dead space as in, like, the story, but dead space as in, like, a lull in not knowing where to go, what to do, or just, you know, I always felt like my action, like, I was just, like, a few steps away from the next thing that I needed to do. And I think that this game was fairly consistent in doing that. So, yeah, I'm going to give this one a 5. I thought that it was executed very well and reminded me of some of my favorite Metroids of yore.
I'm going to give it a 5 as well. The only real criticism I have with the pacing is I feel like some of the item orders are a bit wonky. Like, there's some items you get, like the gravity suit and the wave beam, and the power bomb. Well, honestly, I don't even think the power bombs needed to be in this game at all, if I'm being honest. They felt like pretty tacked on and just in there just because they're in every other 2D Metroid. But yeah, there's some late game items I feel like should have been collected a little earlier. There's some items you collect back to back which feel redundant. Most notably, probably the spin booster and the
spin boost,
and the spade and the space jump, because you collect those back to back. All three of the missile upgrades, the supers, the storms, and the ice missiles, you collect back to back. So I felt like I feel like you could have spaced those out in different locations and maybe swapped out some other items. But overall, that's a relatively minor nitpick in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, because overall, I pretty much agree with you. Like, the actual traversal and the map design, I think, is by far the best 2D in terms of 2D design. Maybe even best in terms of the Prime series as well. Because I thought it was super intuitive how... Because, like, I agree with you. Like, there's so many little so many subtle cues that will guide you into the right direction. And then you also have like the bioluminescent moths and stuff like that. Little design cues that will guide you in the right direction. And there's always an elevator or a teleporter that will take you in the right direction if the next item you need to get isn't still in the same area. And yeah, and it gives this sense, it still gives you the sense of Metroid, revisiting areas and exploring the area without like literally having no idea where to go. You still feel lost, but you don't feel hopelessly overwhelmed, which is ironic in a game called Metroid Dread, but yeah.
I'm going to go against the grain here. It was a 3 for me. I did not like the placement of a lot. I mean, I agree with what a lot of Zoom just said, but they were not really nitpicks for me. They were general gripes that really killed my enjoyment of the game at certain points. As I've said on the show, my biggest one is how late the gravity suit is in this game. Playing in underwater without the gravity suit for what seemed like forever just was so unfun, and I have no idea why it comes so late in the game. And I've been like, well, you can sequence break it. I shouldn't have to sequence break it to get it earlier. It should have just been placed properly. You get like the pulse scan or whatever so late in the game that it becomes useless. The power bomb's unnecessary. The spin jump's unnecessary. Stuff like that. A couple moments in the game where you just get stuck because of things you've done and it creates dead ends, which I mean is in previous Metroids, but I don't think that justifies it. I think it's still dumb. Yeah, I mean, it's a 3 for me. I think maybe that's just personal bias, but the underwater portions without the gravity suit really, really kill the pacing in this game for me, so I have to give it a 3.
See, I disagree with... I'll make this quick because I know you want to go,
Good.
Andy. But...
Disagree with me.
Okay, so maybe it's just me. I don't feel like you were underwater that often in the game. Maybe that was just me. Maybe I just happened to find the correct solution to get out of the underwater areas fast, but like, there's really only 2 or 3 major sequences in the game that I can think where you're like underwater for an extended amount of time, and one of those is for a boss battle, which I actually think is pretty fun. That's one of my least favorite ones. I mean, I wouldn't call it my favorite, but I thought it was a really creative idea. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Just my
maybe I just suck. I don't know.
I can appreciate what you're saying, Dak. I feel like, to me, I actually do think that you were underwater a fair bit without the gravity suit, but like that was just another challenge to me, like to overcome, because you go underwater without the gravity suit and fusion and super, and it's fairly limited, the amount that you actually have to go there. But this one kind of made you go head to head with that, and it kind of reminded me of Metroid Prime 2 in a lot of sense, because you go underwater in that game for like a significant portion of the Torvus Bog, and you don't have the Hydro Jetpack or whatever it is that you get. So it kind of gave me the same idea where like you're fighting enemies, but I mean that Dragaiga boss fight is as much fighting the elements as it is fighting Dragaiga, right? So I like that, but I can I guess I can understand what you're saying about the water. I would disagree though about the portions where like you feel like you're at a dead end. I don't know. I never got that.
There are a couple of those moments where I'm just like, okay, this block is now artificially in my way because the game decided it to be. Like, okay, that's annoying. Like, there are a couple of those big blocks that like end up creating that, and yeah, I don't know.
I will say I agree with that. I don't really think that affects the pacing of the game, but I do agree. Like for instance, like I don't mind it too much because Super Metroid does the same thing, but I think Dread did it. I think Dread pulled that a little too much for my liking, especially in areas where I wanted to continue exploring for like more items during my 100% sweep, for example. Like there's a couple examples specifically in Gavron where you'll activate a pathway that will block out another pathway, and you can't go back there until the end game and use a power bomb to like blow it up, and stuff like that I think is super annoying.
Well, but I mean, to be fair, that's forcing you where you need to go next, so it kind of
but it's forcing me in like a not fun way. So.
Okay, fair enough. Let's go on. So I feel like we can all agree on this next one. If we don't, I'll be
6.
shocked.
6 is legal?
Dak has given it a 6. Gameplay and combat. What do you say, Dak?
Are we allowed? Is 6 allowed? Are we going Dave Meltzer on it and going for 6
How
stars?
How about we give that bonus point and we just throw it to a 3 on the story instead?
No, absolutely not. No, I'll give it a 5.
Okay, well then you got to max out at 5, buddy.
I'll give it a
Feel
5.
the rage in Dak's voice there.
I refuse to do that. No, no, the gameplay is, the best 2D Metroid hands down. I had a lot, aside from what I've said in terms of pacing and other stuff like that, the gameplay in this game is so sick. The bosses, the flash shift, the slide, like, how they streamlined this game from previous Metroids, but still kept that Metroid feel. It also made you feel like you really feel like Samus. You really feel like the character that you kind of know she is. She's very strong, very adaptive, and I know you talked about earlier, kind of like a feeling of helplessness in this game, but I didn't really feel that. I felt more so like you're a very strong character, but now you're evenly matched, and that made it very satisfying. There were tons of things that were legitimate challenges. I never felt helpless, but I felt challenged, and I absolutely love that about this game. So many satisfying moments, and especially after you've gotten through an Emmy room a ton of times, and you figure it out, and you finally take it down. That's some of the best like Metroid moments. Period. Easy 5 for me.
Yeah, I mean, Doom. Do you have anything to add to that?
I was gonna let you go first since I haven't really gone last, so I felt like
You know what?
unless you want to wait.
I'm gonna give it a 5. I'm gonna give it a 5, and I basically agree with everything Dak said. I'll just say this: so I was playing Super Metroid last night, right? And I get by a morph ball tunnel, and I go to press R because I'm just used to being able to have the slide now. And dude, not having that slide, I was like, So
why can't Metroid
the game,
slide?
I never want to go back to not having the slide, not having melee, not having so much of what this game does. Easy 5. I don't need to elaborate.
Yeah, the free aiming, the evolution of the melee just makes the game feel so satisfying and fun and constantly on the move, but still strategic and feels natural. I love it.
All right, so back at the story, I said that I've beaten the game 3 times now, and that every time I beat it, the story had less of an effect on my overall grade, and yeah, this is why. Easy 5. I think gameplay-wise, this is just straight up the best Metroid game ever. Better than the Prime trilogy, better than any of the 2D games. Absolutely. I'm trying so hard not to swear right now. Oh my gosh. This game is so damn fun to play. I absolutely love it to death. And I honestly, I didn't think Mercury Steam had it in them to do this. They absolutely blew away my expectations in the gameplay, especially after Samus Returns, where I had a ton of criticisms in that department. Every single gameplay issue I had with Samus Returns is addressed in this game, and so much new stuff I didn't even know I needed were added, like the slide and the dash, and it all harmoniously works together in the game's exploration and combat loop, and it's just, it's so satisfying. I love it.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy how something as simple as a slide can just like change the dynamic of a game?
Yeah.
It's wild.
It feels
this
so
was the one this was the one
intuitive,
area I was pretty sure that we were all going to agree on, so I'm glad to see that we did.
I won't agree that
what
it's
makes
better
it
than
work
the Prime
so well,
games, though.
or sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say, what makes it work so well, though, is how all of the abilities, like, are chained together. It's not like you use one, then you have to wait for a cooldown and wait for the other, with the exception of the flash shift. Everything, like, it works together. You can use your counter while you're sliding, or while you're jumping, or while you're running, or while you're standing still. You can charge up a speed booster, then you can flash shift and slide into a corner, and then you shine spark, and then wall jump from that shine spark. And, like, everything chains together, and when you, like, learn how all of your moves play into each other, it creates so much fun tech and all that. Like, honestly, the speed booster alone, like, I feel like you could give that its own category on definitive ranking for this game specifically.
We'll get there.
Oh my god, I love.
Actually, Doom, you might as well just lead us off on our next category here: items and abilities. Talking about the speed booster, what say you for that?
Oh my god, 5, dude! The speed boost. This is the best speed booster ever. Like, I didn't after Metroid Zero Mission, I didn't think that we could be eaten any better than that. But nah, dude, Mercury Steam just went and like, nah, we're gonna create the best speed booster ever. We're gonna make this. Like, oh my gosh, the stuff you can do with the speed booster alone in this game, just being able to transition in and out of morph ball while speed boosting, wall jumping while speed boosting, like the stuff that you can use to keep your momentum, and I feel like it gives me the same feeling that Doom Eternal does, and that Doom Eternal is a game about combat-based momentum, and traversing around the environment. And I love momentum-based games, and Dread, I feel like, since Zero Mission or Super, is like the most momentum-based game and how it applies in the exploration and the combat. And pretty much, I'm just gonna, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I love it. I love it. Easy 5.
Dak, what say you? Items and abilities.
This is gonna be an uneasy 5 for me, because I do have a couple of nitpicks. I think there are some items and abilities that are essentially useless, and I was pretty let down that we didn't get any like cool new suits except at the end of the game, and then it's quickly taken away from us. But stuff like the flash shift and the slide, the speed booster, I mean, all of that like completely outweigh that. Like the flash shift alone is like my favorite Metroid ability, I think, right now. Like, give me an air dash, I'm in. That just makes the game so much more fun and creative. The things you can do and just continually be moving, you know, keeping that momentum, keeping, you know, that inertia and constantly repositioning yourself. I love it. Like, yeah, I could easily, I almost want to make it a 4 because I was let down by some abilities and items and I wanted better suits and I wanted a little more creativity in some areas, but I have to give it a 5 because my favorite things that were introduced in this game are just so fun to use and play with that it's hard to think of anything else. So I'm gonna give it a 5 as well.
The only
what's funny? Sorry, I keep cutting you off, Doom. Go ahead.
It's all good. I was gonna say, I'll make it quick. The only real nitpick I have regarding the items is that the cross bombs aren't used that much, which is a shame because I think that's a genuinely really cool item, and we haven't really had anything like that before. And not only do you collect it late game, but then after that, it almost never gets used outside of like a couple puzzles that you're only going to do if you're going for 100%. But yeah, other than that, yeah, I love the item selection in this game.
Dak, how did you describe that? An uneasy 5?
An uneasy 5 because I do have problems with it to that
right.
would make me want to give it a 4 if not for the flash shift.
I think that almost verbatim, I would have said the same thing. Mine is a 5, but it was almost a 4. That's why I wanted you guys to go first. But because I do think that there are a couple items that are like the spin boost is just kind of a bum item. It's
superfluous.
Kind of like it's just like a wet towel. You know, it didn't need to be there. I think that I love the concept of the cross bombs, and I think that's super useful. Like for both getting across dissolvable blocks and just so you don't have to like bomb, move forward, bomb, move forward, bomb, move forward. So I thought that the cross bomb was great, but it wasn't utilized super well, or maybe it could have been acquired earlier in the game. And there wasn't, there wasn't a new suit, which I was hoping that there might be. And there wasn't, like, yes, there was the flash shift and the cross bombs were new, but there weren't like a lot of new abilities. But I think that I am going to give it a 5 because the abilities that were there, they weren't new, but I think that they were the best versions of themselves that they've ever been. Like the speed boost is clearly the best version of the speed boost that we've ever had. The ice missiles I thought were great. The storm missile, we've seen that in Metroid Prime 3 before, but or even Metroid Prime 2. But like this thing was awesome.
Other M as well,
especially for fighting bosses. True. You had the diffusion beam is another one that I would kind of put as a
but then they have the Omega
game.
Cannon and they don't keep the continuity from Hunters, which also makes me mad because now there's another Omega Cannon for some reason. Like that stuff like that.
I'll be honest, 4. I don't care. We've had like 3 different hyper beams now.
I care. Why do they have to keep continuity from that trash other M when they can keep the continuity from an amazing game, Hunters? That's a problem. I have a problem. I have.
I mean, we have like 3 different hyper beams.
The Omega Cannon is
Omega
actually sick,
now.
by the way.
It is sick, but like they could have called it something else. Like it didn't have to be called. That tells me that they don't have the care that I would have. Anyway.
Well, yeah, nobody wants to play Hunters. Come on,
only
everybody
cool
knows
kids want to play
that.
Hunters, and that's why it was one of the best-selling Metroid games, and why it was so much fun, and why Prime 4 is gonna have multiplayer, and why I love it so much.
Well, there we go. Those are a lot of reasons to play Hunters. So yeah, I think that an uneasy 5 for me. I felt very strongly about my 5 for the pacing and progression, for the gameplay. For some other categories that we have yet to get to. But this one I was going back and forth on. But I think that you guys sold me. I mean, really the speed boost alone, like we were talking about last week, is almost enough to bump this up to a 5 on its own. So yeah.
I'm with that.
Okay, let's move on here. Let's go to the areas of this game. And this is different, I feel like, from the world and atmosphere. That's kind of the whole package. But when we look at the areas, I kind of like to analyze, like, the individual areas, almost like we do in Mapping Metroid, and like, everything that they offer, everything that you can do in those areas. And I think that the areas of this game are really strong. I think I think I'm not going to go 5, but I am going to go 4. And I think that I don't think you like this deck, but I do like that they're a little bit more themed. Like Gavarin is like the forest, Dairon is this dark, creepy factory. You know, Cataris is the fireplace. Artaria is the rock place. I kind of like that they have a little bit of an identity that way. While, like Doom said earlier, they're not like it's not all that. Like there are water areas in Gavarin, or there are some factory-ish areas in Berenia. I think that I can never remember what the place where the X is called. Is it Elan? I think it's.
Oh, you can't remember the name of an area? I'm shocked.
Well, you know, give it time.
Yeah, I think
give it time.
Elan.
That area was wicked. That place is awesome.
Yeah.
Ferenia, I think, is a really, really strong area, just with the amount of like Chozo-esque items that you can see, and you know, all of the small little details in there. So I think that a lot of the areas are really strong. I don't know what's holding it back from a 5 for me. Maybe just that they could have had a little bit more personality with them, and maybe that goes back into the story of the game. But like, for example, in the Metroid Dread reports, we kind of learned that, you know, the Chozo use Kataris as a thermal reactor to heat up the planet, or blah blah blah. And you learn that in the Dread reports, but you don't necessarily learn that in the actual game itself. So maybe that's what's keeping it back. Maybe you know, and we'll talk about it later. But maybe the music not really, you know. I think that the music in Super Metroid takes those areas to an even higher level, and I don't think that necessarily that's the case in these ones. I think it's functional, but it doesn't necessarily elevate it. So I'm not going to give him a 5, but I am going to give him a 4. Dak, what say you?
No, I agree. I'm a 4 as well. I think the thing about the areas in this game is that they are video game areas. Like you said, you got your fire area, your water area, and sure, like there is stuff mixed around, but it's like the generic like themed areas you expect from a video game, and I just wish there was more creativity. Like some of the best areas of the game, I guess, are like, in my opinion, the Chozo areas, and those aren't even like extremely creative, but at least they were a little different. I went like, okay, I've been through this fire area, like I've done this a billion times in a billion games. I just wish there was a bit more creativity. One of my favorite things about the Prime games is that like Metroid Prime itself is really good, so like I at least back then, like that was in 2001 or 2000, you know, early 2000s. So like I'm okay with back then going with like the pretty video gamey ice area, fire area, water area. But it's been 20 years. Like I think I play so many games now where like they get so creative with the different locations you get into, and then I get into this game and it's like the same stuff I kind of expect, and I don't know, it didn't wow me like the gameplay did. So that's why I have to give it a 4. Also, the names suck. Naming convention knocks it down a peg.
I was waiting for that.
So bad. Oh my god, it's horrible, the naming in this game. Even like when Doom, we were talking about, oh, do you remember this enemy? No, I don't, because it has some random name that doesn't at all correspond to what it is. Therefore, I'm not going to remember this random made-up name. No. So yeah,
listen to this guy. He expects us to remember the name of the Omega Cannon and not whatever enemy Doom was talking about earlier.
Yeah, the Omega Cannon is a distinct name, which had continuity, but I digress.
They should have called it the Omega Metroid Cannon. That would have been awesome.
That would have been better. Or they could have called it the Emmy Cannon or something. The robot
Doom,
cannon.
bring us home.
Actually, unironically, Emmy Cannon I think would have made a lot more sense for that. But anyways, I digress. Yeah, naming conventions aside, yeah, I'm probably going to give it a 4 as well. I pretty much agree with all your points. I don't have much to add. I guess one thing I will say is I feel like we've all been spoiled on the art direction of the Prime Trilogy, just because, I mean, that art direction in that whole trilogy is just like such like it is on a whole other level compared to like most other games we even see today, let alone Metroid games. You know, especially like some of the stuff in Prime 2 with like Sanctuary Fortress and just like all the crazy creativity that they did. Skytown in Prime 3, like, and like as much as beautiful as this game is, you know, we've talked about the art direction. None of the areas ever feel like they're in as quite much of a lived-in place as those are in the Prime trilogy, despite the fact that there's, I would say, less NPCs with the exception of maybe Metroid Prime 3. All I got to say.
Fair enough. All right. Well, let us move on to our next category. We got enemies and bosses. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. 5. Enemies and bosses 5. I think overall all the enemy. I mean, this game very obviously improves upon one of Samus Return's major issues, which was the lack of enemy diversity. I think there were a couple times in this game where like it felt like every room I was walking into had a different kind of enemy, and I was absolutely loving that. Even like some of the smaller enemies are still pretty cool, even if I can't remember their names. And obviously the bosses are overall really well done, really well designed. I mean, even in the case of like the experiment boss and like Ravenbeak, very creative and imaginative, and like boss battles I've never seen in a Metroid game. Really well done. I love how the game then gives you variations with the X clones. That was very perfect way to integrate them in and give you even more enemy diversity. There's a lot of really cool gameplay encounters involving the bosses and enemies that test you and force you to really use your abilities to the best of your ability. Yeah, overall another 5 for me, very easily.
Yep. Easy 5 on my end as well. Yeah, I think these are some of the best bosses we've ever gotten in a Metroid game. I think Metroid Prime 2 is like the one game that I think might rival this in terms of bosses. Ravenbeak is somewhere in my top 5, I think. Absolutely incredible final boss. I mean, you already did a whole boss episode, so I won't go too much in depth. But yeah, Ravenbeak, Experiment, even Corpius. I think Corpius is a really, really fun boss as well.
He's awesome.
Yeah. These bosses again, like. I talked a little bit about the combat loop in this game, and I think that applies even more so during the bosses, not just the general combat. And yeah, it's fun, it's cinematic, it has puzzle elements too, it just incorporates everything together in each fight. It's just really engaging.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. Like, this is an easy 5. We talked about it last week with the bosses. The worst boss in this game is still, like, pretty fun. The best boss in this game is on a whole other level from anything, I think, that we've probably seen in any Metroid game. So, putting that aside, yeah, the enemies in this game, like, there's so many cool enemies and variations of different creatures that you can fight on ZDR, which also really helps kind of feed into the world and atmosphere. It feels very populated with like, wildlife and just, creatures living on this planet. So, yeah, this is an easy 5. One that I don't even think that we need to spend a whole lot of time talking about. So, yeah, there we go. Let's move on to our next category. This is one that I know that you don't really spend a whole lot of time diving into all the extras and stuff like that, Dak. So I kind of want you to kick us off here with collectibles, extras, missile expansions, all that good stuff. What did you think?
I mean, this is one of the things, that isn't a huge thing for me. I don't always I haven't even 100% of this game yet. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm pretty in the middle for this. I guess I'll give it a 3. I don't know. Does this game even have like different end screens you can get? I don't even know.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna say a 3. The game didn't really make me want to go out of my way to get expansions and stuff. I didn't go out of my way to get anything except what I got to finish the game.
I feel like you usually don't, though, right?
No, I usually don't.
In any Metroid game, yeah.
I mean, I have 100% of some Metroid games, but it's not something I feel like I need to do, and it's usually just because I have played the game a lot, so eventually I do it. Like, I'm sure I'll eventually 100% Dread. It's only been a month. Like, I don't think I've ever 100%ed a Metroid game within a month of playing it, so that's just really me. I don't really have a big opinion on it, so I'm just going to give it a 3.
Oh, man. Doom, I know that you've 100% of this game. What say you?
Yeah, my first playthrough, I actually I wanted to get 100% on it. But yeah, easy 5 for, again, the speed booster puzzles alone. Best in the whole series. Yeah. Absolutely incredible. That aside, though, there's also some really... the game really has a lot of creative puzzles that really stumped me for a bit. And then when I finally figured out the solution, like, it felt really good. It was a really nice aha moment. There's one in particular, and... I know, Andy, you're gonna know the one I'm talking about. The one in the lower third of Daron. After you collect the wave beam, there's a wave beam door that has a one-way exit, and I was trying to figure out how to enter the area because you're in a small tube, and then there's an area below you, but there. But there's no destroyable blocks to get into the area, and so I was looking all over the map using my scan pulse, trying to find the entrance to the area. and I just, for the life of me, could not figure how to get in until finally I realized, wait a minute, that's a wave beam block. I have a wave beam. I can just shoot through the tube and open the door from inside the tube, and that like blew me away. Like
it was so simple and just yeah.
Yeah, it's such a simple puzzle, but like when you solve it, it was just like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I have Galaxy Brain IQ now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm like the opposite of Dak. I play a Metroid game and like I'm not leaving until I 100% it. My first, like I didn't go fight Ravenbeak until I had 100% of the items in Metroid Dread. Yeah, this is an easy 5, and this would be like my Break the Meltzer scale category right here, because this could be a 6, like based on the Shine Spark puzzles alone. Every area. So we talk about Metroid Zero Mission as like having some really crazy Shine Spark puzzles, and actually we don't talk about Metroid Fusion that much, but that game has some awesome ones too. Every single area has at least one absolutely bonkers Shine Spark puzzle, and most have a couple, and it's so satisfying to pull these off. And like this kind of feeds back into how the shines, like the speed boost and stuff, work in this game, and now you can jump and now you can slide. But dude, the amount of crazy, like, I mean, the one as soon as you get into Ferenia, where you Shine Spark, slide, bomb, and then go straight up as a ball, is just like the most insane puzzle. Or the one in Berenia at the bottom, where like you have to Shine Spark in midair, slide, drop, Shine Spark in mid, like it's crazy. And there are a bunch of other cool expansions as well that require you to use other abilities, like the wave beam, like Doom was talking about, or like the storm missiles. There's so many just like really awesome ways that this game utilizes your abilities in order to like go for 100% completion. In terms of like extras, yeah, there are a bunch of different ending screens, and I really, really liked how there was a section of the ending that was based on item percentage. So, you know, if you're like me and your first playthrough, you're just like, you're wanting to get everything, you're obviously not going to get the best time when you're doing that. And I've always been a fan of item percentage endings in Metroid. So there is a section like that, but there is also a section that is based on time. And there's also a section based on both of those for a higher difficulty. So I really like that. I thought it was really encouraging to me to like go and replay this game immediately after I had finished it. I mean, I was probably going to replay it anyways, but now I was just like, oh, okay, now I have a reason to replay it because I want to unlock this ending screen, and I want to unlock this ending screen, and whatever. So the amount of expansions is off the charts. The amount of extras is awesome, and I think that this game does a really good job of kind of like, I don't know, pacing out the expansions as well. Like I felt like I had enough when I went to go fight. If I would have went to fight Ravenbeak before I decided to 100% the game, I felt like I could have taken him on. I did the game in under 4 hours, and like when I got to Ravenbeak, I felt like I was still powerful enough to get to him. The only critique that I have would be about the game's map, and that would be that if you're missing like one missile, there's no legend on the side where you can just highlight that one missile and it shows you where on the map it is. You know what I'm talking about, Doom? When you have to go and like actually find the expansion on the map. That's kind of a pain in the ass. I will say that. But that's a very, very minor critique.
Yeah, I'll go off on the map as well, because I do think the map can be a little overly cluttered, especially on your first playthrough.
I do too.
When you haven't, memorized all the locations and what everything necessarily means. I think something that would have helped tremendously is a feature to mute all of the expansions and items that you'd already collected. Something as simple as that, I feel like, would have decluttered the map significantly and would have made that first 100% playthrough significantly easier. But even so, like, I think it's easily like nowhere near one of the hardest games to 100% at the same time. So it's a very minor nitpick. And then again, I also think power bombs are pointless. So going back for the power bomb expansions, especially when I already picked up 4 that didn't do anything, it was just like, okay.
Yeah, I agree, actually. I think that the map is probably, there's too much going on for its own good. But like, which is a critique, but I mean, also you can look at the map and you can say like, all right, you need to, this is a just a regular dissolvable block, or like this is just a block that you can blow up with regular bombs, or and I do appreciate that, but it is a little bit cluttered.
Yeah, I love the fact that blocks are permanently marked now instead of just when you they revert back to normal when you leave the room, like in previous games. Like I didn't even think of that as like a quality of life feature that I needed, but it makes the progression like so much more streamlined.
Well, there we go. Some more high grades for Metroid Dread. We got one category left, and oof, I'm not sure how we're going to do in this category. Who wants to go first, talking about music and sound design?
Not me.
I guess I'll do it. I mean, I did just release a rip of the soundtrack yesterday, so...
All right.
You know what? I probably am most curious to hear what you think, Doom. I feel like I am anticipating something, but maybe I'll be surprised.
I don't think you'll be surprised. I'm gonna give the music a 2. I was really disappointed with the direction the music was taken in this game, and there's a few different things going on. I don't think I've been able to wrap my full thoughts around, but there's just a few little trends in the music that I noticed. The first one that I'll get out of the way is, my God, Kenji Yamamoto, please just be the lead composer again. Like, I miss you, my man. I miss you. Like, he does a couple tracks in this game. Much like in Samus Returns, his role is to do the classical arrangements of previous themes. So he does the title theme, the theme of Samus, the Brinstar Red theme. I think he might have done the item collection and the Spawn themes. I'm not too sure on that, though. But yeah, otherwise, we got 2 new guys up there, and I mean, no offense to them, I'm sure they're fantastic composers, but I feel like Kenji Yamamoto just understands the Metroid formula to a degree that's just unrivaled by anyone. And I talked about this with Dak on our Metroid music episode, but for me, the core fundamental philosophy is Hirokazu Tanaka's philosophy, the original Metroid 1 composer, where he basically said that he wanted the music and the environment to feel like one cohesive, living, breathing creature. I'm paraphrasing what he said, and I feel like nobody has really fulfilled that vision quite like Kenji Yamamoto, especially with his work on the Prime Trilogy, where I feel like that music really melded the diegetic and non-diegetic worlds of the game together. And there are some areas where the new composers actually successfully do that. So I do want to give some praise to that. Specifically, the Emmy zones, all three of the themes that play in those zones, I feel like that to me is like the essence of Metroid. Those are Metroid tracks. Especially for me, because while I was ripping the soundtracks, those little beep 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 beep, I thought that was part of the music. No, those are actually the Emmys making the noise, not the music making the noise. So that like blew me away. That's like the perfect representation of Metroid music, where I can't tell what's music and what's reality. And so I love that. But then there's other tracks that either don't fit the environment at all, or I just actively dislike. So like, for example, like I was listening to the Ravenbeak theme, and I was thinking to myself, like, my God, if I was playing like Ocarina of Time right now and this was a Ganondorf theme, like, I'd be losing my mind. Like, this would be amazing, but this just doesn't feel like a Metroid track. And I think part of that has to do with the instruments that are used. This game utilizes a lot of orchestral instruments, but they're also like really cheap orchestral instruments. They don't sound real or authentic, for lack of a better word. They sound like something you expect off like in a late 90s or early 2000s game, and it just didn't mesh with the environment that the game was presenting to me. And so overall, I think that's where my biggest criticisms of the game so far. There are some tracks that I really enjoy. I like the main Arteria theme. I think it's a bit short, but for what it is, I really enjoy that. I like the Corpius boss battle theme. It's honestly probably the only boss theme that really stood out to me. And then I think the Brinstar Red arrangement, I think that might be the best version of Brinstar Red we've ever gotten. But I mean, again, Kenji Yamamoto, the absolute GOAT. Other than that, and then the Arteria Hot Area theme. That might be my favorite track in the game. I really like that. But otherwise, I'll be honest, nothing really stands out to me, if I'm being completely honest.
Dak, what say you?
The music has a 1 for me in this game. Probably the absolute weakest part of the game. Like, I mean, I have gripes with the story, but man, I mean, the soundtrack of this game is just so bad. I've never played a Metroid game that in a certain area has made me want to stop playing or leave the area so badly, and other than this game. Even Other M had good music. Even Federation Force has some like music that doesn't make me want to stop playing the game. I want to stop playing the game for other reasons. But like, there was one particular theme in this game. I think it's like one of the Dairon themes or the main theme that like literally it has go away heat for me. I mean, this soundtrack is so weak. Doesn't have any standout tracks whatsoever. In fact, a lot of the tracks just have way too much noise and random. It's like someone, like I think I said this on one of the previous episodes, where like it sounds like someone just has like a big soundboard of random effects and they're just mashing them at times. And just, oh, this sounds cool. Like they're just putting random stuff in there. It doesn't make any sense.
Agree.
Doesn't sound good. It's so overpacked with sound. It's like, it's so much. There was actually a time I was playing the game where I muted it because it was just way too much and not well done at all. I absolutely do. I can accept the story not being perfect, even though that's a big reason why I wanted the game, but like a Metroid game needs to have a killer soundtrack. That's a part of the Metroid experience. And this game, it does not have it. I don't know what they were doing. So many of these themes are so like they blend together. They don't stand out. They don't have any cool like riffs or motifs at all. I can't barely think of any standout tracks at all except the one that I actually hated. So an easy one for me.
Okay. I'm not going to disagree necessarily. I think we could all probably agree that the music was underwhelming, probably the weak point of the game. I'm going to give it a 3 because I do like some of the tracks here. I like the Ravenbeak theme. I like the Emmy theme. I like the Arteria theme and the Ferenia theme. I think that those are really strong. I think that this game could have used a remix in an area. You know what I mean? Like, let's say that if you were in Berenia and there was like a remix of the Meridia theme from Super Metroid, I think that would have helped. Or if there was a remix of just something, I think that would have helped. Because I think that this game, when they did use remixes, like the Red Brinstar track is great. That's probably my favorite theme of the entirety of Metroid. But I was like, oh man, like I don't need this remix in another Metroid game. Like this was in Samus Returns, this was in Metroid Prime 2, obviously it was in Super Metroid. Let's use something else. And so I didn't think that cutscene necessarily needed it. I did think that the remix of Samus's theme was awesome. Like that was a wicked like intro sound that they used. But yeah, I think that if you would have had like something that people were a little bit more familiar with, that would have helped. Because I think that the music sounds forgettable because a lot of it is new, but also none of it really, like I was saying earlier, elevates the areas either. So I think that even on a subconscious level, going back to my Meridia example, like if there would have been a Meridia music, we already kind of associate that with water, and that would have been playing in Berenia, even subconsciously be like, oh, cool, this makes sense. Like this is the water, like, you know what I mean? Whereas, yeah, I think that the music here, I don't think it's bad, but I don't think that it's memorable, which maybe does make it bad. I don't know.
I think it makes it
I think that it sounds fine when you're listening to it, and I think that I've listened to the soundtrack at work, and I think that it sounds fine when you're listening to it there as well, like on its own. But I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to certainly rank it among the strongest in the Metroid series. I think that music was a weak spot in Samus Returns too, and I think I would say that the music in this game probably is better than that game, because in that game there is just like a ton of ambiance and noises and bloops and bleeps. So yeah, I think that it's better than in that game, but maybe not much better. I will say that the actual sound design of this game is great. Like the beam sounds awesome, the movement sounds awesome, the fights sound awesome, environment sounds awesome for the most part, especially the Emmy zones. So that's another reason why I'm going a little bit higher. But yeah, I mean, you know, I don't think that this is going to be breaking ground to anybody here that you know, that we're kind of ranking the music as the weak part of Metroid Dread. I think that's been pretty consistent around the board.
Yeah, I disagree with you on the Samus Returns critique. Not necessarily, because I think the problem with Samus Returns, because I think you're onto something, but where I disagree is that I think Samus Returns has a significantly better soundtrack. The problem is that all the best music in that game is barely played. Most of the music that you're going to hear in that game is kind of generic ambience, which can get tiring after a while. And like, all of like the memorable original themes and, the classical themes, like the theme of SR388. That's like one of the most common themes you hear in Metroid 2, but they turn that whole area into basically like the training area in Samus Returns, and so you barely get to hear that incredible new arrangement in that game. The Chozo Laboratory theme, which I think is your favorite theme in Samus Returns, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, that area is like so small compared to most of the other areas in the game, and so you barely get to hear that before you're moved on to whatever the next area is after that. I think it's the Queen's Lair after that. But the actual music itself, I think, is significantly stronger than what's offered in Dread. But yeah, one final thing I'll go on, because I do want to bring this up, but I've seen a lot of people online that are basically putting out this sort of criticism that like, oh, the only reason why people don't like Dread soundtrack is because it doesn't nostalgia bait them, and I vehemently disagree with that. I do agree that the game could have used a couple more classical arrangements, but the fact is most Metroid games don't have that many. I feel like the reason why this critique is going around is because the last game we got was Samus Returns, which is a remake of Metroid 2, so naturally, not only do you have those classic Metroid 2 pieces, but also you have a ton of classical arrangements from other games as well, which leads into that game's soundtrack being heavily buffed by those nostalgia pieces.
Even then, like I thought that it was super obnoxious in Samus Returns every time you walk into the fire room, no matter what music is playing.
I agree. Yeah.
All of a sudden it's like dun dun. I was like, oh my god, come on. And I love that song.
Agree. The actual piece itself I thought is really well done, but yeah, the way it was implemented, I thought really took away from the power that it has. It was overused, much like a lot of that game's ambience. But anyways, I digress. But yeah, my critique of the game is solely based on those original pieces. I'm not even factoring in the ratio of classic to original compositions, because and I bring this up every time. At one point when we were playing Metroid, those classic nostalgia bait pieces were the brand new pieces for us. Like Fendrana Drifts was a brand new piece at one time. The reason why it's nostalgia bait now is because it impacted us so hard, because that track did what it was supposed to do. The reason why stuff like Brinstar Red and Surface of SR388 and a million other Metroid tunes that I could list off right now, the reason why those are so nostalgia baity is because they were so good, because they were so impactful. Metroid Dread, I can't think of, even the tracks that I do like, I can't think of a single track in Metroid Dread that has anywhere near the impact of some of those other pieces of music. But anyways, that's all I'm going to say on this. I feel like I've made as much of a case as I can make at this point.
There you go. All right, so I've been keeping track of my scores here to divide by 10 and give me an overall score. I don't know if you guys have been keeping track of yours, but without
I have not.
Further ado, I have, looking at all of mine, I have a 4.6 out of 5. So that is easily the highest game that we've done so far. We've only done 4 games on our definitive ranking.
For you.
But yeah, that's the highest one for me so far, for sure.
I guess I have to go back and score it myself, but definitely not a 4.6.
No, you were given 5s to Metroid Fusion like a drunken sailor.
Because it deserves it. Metroid Fusion is way better than this game, so...
Listen to you. All right, keep talking while I
guess
get your scores ready.
Yeah, I was going to say... I'm trying to remember all of my scores. Hopefully you remember them. But yeah, I mean, overall, this game for me is like, it's so good in many areas, but it's not as great in others. So it's not like a full package game for me, which I feel like my favorite Metroid games are full package. They have great worlds and stories and characters and abilities and music and gameplay. And this game has like really high highs and like the gameplay and stuff like that, but really low lows for me in like the story and music. So it's like, I definitely can't say it's my favorite Metroid game, but easily, or even my favorite 2D Metroid. Even if I do agree that the gameplay is the best out of all the 2D Metroids, it's just not the best full package for me. So yeah, I definitely would say like the Prime games are higher, Fusion is higher, but that's also my bias showing through clearly. I mean, The Metroid Prime gameplay
Well,
will
of
always
course.
Metroid Prime will always have the best gameplay for me and still does. And some parts just don't make me like I'm not like I wish I loved this game, but I don't. Unfortunately, I really like it. I think it's very good, but I don't love it, and I wanted to love it. So that's where I'm standing.
All right, here we go, and then we're going to get out of here because we're going super long here. So Andy Spiteri has got a 4.6 out of 5 based on the rankings and then dividing by 10. Doomino Crossing has a 4.4, and Dakota Lasky, old grumpy pants over there, he's got a 3.8. Still a pretty good score,
3.8,
though,
yeah.
for a Metroid game.
Yep, I agree with 3.8.
Yeah, so I think that is pretty fair, and I think that we were fair with our critiques. I think that we loved what we loved. I don't think that we were unfair on any particular category. The music deserved criticism, and the story deserved criticism as well, and it got it. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with our overall ranking here, fellas.
Yeah, I agree.
Same. I'm glad we finally got to talk about it. I've been itching to talk about this game with y'all for so long now.
Well,
yeah,
we're glad that you could join us, Doom, for this episode. Our man is in his car right now, recording with us, so we better get out of here.
Yeah, I'll post a picture of my setup on the Discord in just a second.
Yeah, that's commitment right there. So, that being said, thank you guys for listening. We want to know, of course, what you think about our definitive Metroid Dread rankings. Go make your own rankings. I'd love to see what some of the guys in our Discord think. Guys like Chris06 or Kiwi or Big Griff. Any of you guys, all of you guys, I want to know what you think. Show us your list. But in the meantime, we are going to get out of here. Of course, check us out on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod, at Spiteri316, at DaxCity_, and at Doomino Cross. And of course, check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Like and subscribe. Recommend us to that Metroid fan in your life. We're going to be back next week. We're going to drag Dak kicking and screaming to suggest what we would like to see in Metroid 6. Until then, everybody, take care.